How Sadler took control of Resident Evil 4's village. The villagers in Resident Evil 4 are not zombies. They speak, farm, coordinate attacks, and stop when a church bell rings. They are ganados, humans controlled through Las Plagas. Sadler did not conquer Valdalobos with an army. He captured its leadership, religion, labor, and nervous systems. Then his followers arrived as saviors and offered the village a cure. The cure was the infection, what the Salazars buried. To understand how Sadler took control, we need to go beneath the Salazar castle, where an ancient parasite had been buried for generations. Las Plagas are organisms capable of living inside vertebrate hosts. They connect to the central nervous system, alter behavior, and develop through several stages. An infected person can retain learned skills, speech, coordination, and social behavior while becoming subordinate to a parasite hierarchy. That is why ganados are more useful than zombies. A zombie can spread infection and attack nearby people. It cannot maintain a farm, operate machinery, follow a complex command, or pretend to be normal from a distance. A ganado can. Sadler sees the true value immediately. Las Plagas are not merely tools for creating strong bioorganic weapons. Their greatest value is control. The parasite lets him turn yesterday's enemy into today's servant without teaching the body anything new. The host already knows how to work, speak, fight, and navigate the village. Sadler only needs to remove the part that can refuse, but he cannot begin with the villagers. He needs access to the parasites. How Sadler found his door. Centuries earlier, the first Castellan of the Salazar family opposed Los Iluminados, the cult built around Las Plagas. The Salazars persecuted the followers and sealed the parasites beneath the castle. The plan worked well enough that the cult lost public power, but it did not destroy the organism. By the modern era, Ramon Salazar inherits the castle and the family's guilt. He is young, isolated, physically distinctive, and raised beneath the weight of a long bloodline. Sadler presents himself as a spiritual father and convinces Ramon that his ancestors' suppression of Los Iluminados was a sin. Ramon's written confession in the remake is complete submission. He calls Sadler his benevolent father, condemns his own family's actions, and promises to release the holy plagas hidden below the castle. This is Sadler's first major conquest. Before he controls the village biologically, he controls the man with legal and physical access to the source, the mine that infected everyone. Ramon orders excavation. In the original Resident Evil 4, files explain that workers uncovered what appeared to be fossilized remains. The parasites survived in a dormant form, possibly as spores, and infected villagers involved in the excavation. Convulsions appeared years later, followed by violent behavior. The remake restructures parts of that history around amber deposits, excavation records, and deliberate cult administration. The core event remains. Salazar releases what his ancestor buried, allowing Sadler to recover and cultivate Las Plagas. Mining becomes infection. The remake's foreman's log shows workers collapsing after inhaling dust during excavation. One man begins coughing and vomiting blood. His writing deteriorates until the work itself feels joyful, and he offers everything to Sadler. The change is horrifying because the final entry sounds content. Control does not always feel like pain to the controlled person. The parasite can turn obedience into satisfaction. When the saviors arrived. Once Sadler has viable plagas, he expands from the castle toward the village. The remake's village records tell that takeover through the life of Bitores Mendez, the village chief. Before the cult, Mendez is not presented as a giant boss waiting inside a burning barn. He is a community leader. He inherits responsibility from an elder. He teaches literacy and mathematics to children. He eats with families to hear complaints and gossip. He opens the village to outside trade. An ironworks is built. Fishing improves. Photographs begin showing smiles. The notes are simple, which makes them devastating. They prove the villagers had ordinary goals. Better tools, more food, education for children, connection to the outside. Then a group in black robes descends from the castle and raises the symbol of Los Iluminados. They preach salvation and forgiveness. They inject the villagers with something they claim will cure a madness spreading through the community. The promise exploits a real fear. The village had already encountered strange illness connected to plaga-infected animals or earlier exposure. Luis Serra's grandfather is wounded by a wolf that should have died from a gunshot. His wound swells. He hears voices and feels his body moving against his will. The villagers burn the cabin to prevent the madness from spreading. Young Luis watches, then disappears from the village. Years later, when robed outsiders offer a cure, the community has a reason to listen. Sadler does not arrive saying, "Please accept the obedience parasite we found under your landlord's castle." He presents Los Iluminados as the answer to a danger the parasite itself represents. This is classic control. Create or exploit insecurity, offer protection, then make access to protection dependent on submission. The injections infect the villagers with plaga eggs or larvae. As the parasites mature, Sadler's cult replaces local authority. Mendez becomes a powerful host and chief enforcer. The church becomes a center of ritual and command. Daily work continues, but its purpose changes. Farms feed the cult. The ironworks supports weapons and industry. The quarry and lake become controlled territory. The villagers become labor, guards, and sacrifices. The third volume of the village records shows the result. Crops wither and cattle grow thin because Sadler's orders take priority over maintaining the community. Famine follows. Dozens starve. Villagers are selected for Lord Sadler through ritual lots. Outsiders who wander in are taken to the altar instead. The settlement has not stopped functioning. It has been reorganized around extraction. That is why the word ganado is appropriate. In Spanish, it can refer to livestock. The hosts are treated as a herd. They still perform human actions, but the cult assigns the value of those actions. A farmer is useful because he produces food. A strong host becomes an enforcer. A child may become material for ritual. A stranger becomes a body for infection. Sadler's control is not absolute in one identical way for every host. Standard plagas can suppress independence and connect a ganado to dominant signals. More advanced or dominant species allow leaders to command others while retaining greater intelligence and self-direction. Mendez, Salazar, Sadler, and later Krauser operate with far more personality than ordinary villagers. They are infected or enhanced, but they can plan, negotiate, and pursue individual strategies. How one man controlled thousands. This hierarchy makes the cult scalable. Sadler does not need to issue one instruction directly to every farmer. Leaders relay authority through religion, social structure, and parasitic dominance. The biology reinforces the institution, and the institution organizes the biology. That combination is why Valdelobos remains controlled even when Sadler is far away on the island. The villagers know the church, chief, work schedule, and rituals. The plaga supplies obedience. Culture supplies the shape obedience takes. Leon sees the finished system when he arrives in 2004. His mission is to recover Ashley Graham, the daughter of the United States President. Intelligence places her in a remote European village. 2 local police officers drive Leon toward the area and are quickly captured and killed. The first house appears ordinary until Leon discovers one officer's identification and is attacked by a villager. Then the village square reveals the scale. Ganados burn the police officer's body, organize around Leon's presence, and attack with axes, pitchforks, knives, and a chainsaw. They communicate, they flank, they climb through windows and break barricades. When the church bell rings, they stop. That moment explains more about Sadler's control than is any speech. The villagers are not lost in individual bloodlust. A signal reaches the group, and the mission changes. They abandon Leon and walk toward the church together. The famous line about everyone going to bingo is funny because the behavior is so coordinated it resembles a community appointment. In a horrible way, it is. Their social routine has been preserved and hollowed out. Why Ashley had to escape. Sadler's broader plan uses the same mechanism against the United States. Los Iluminados kidnaps Ashley with help from an insider, brings her to Valdelobos, and infects her with a plaga. The goal is not simply ransom. Sadler wants Leon to rescue her after the parasite matures. Ashley will return to her father and carry Sadler's influence into the American government. One controlled insider near the president could compromise an entire country. The superior plaga research on the island is designed to preserve intelligence while strengthening dominance, making infiltration more effective. Sadler takes control of one village as a prototype for taking control of the world. Valdelobos demonstrates the full sequence. Gain access through a converted leader. Recover and cultivate the parasite. Enter a vulnerable community as a source of salvation. Infect the population. Preserve useful skills. Place dominant hosts above ordinary ones. Redirect labor and resources toward expansion. Use the controlled community to infect the next institution. This is why killing every ganado does not feel like rescuing the village. By the time Leon arrives, most hosts are deeply infected. Removing a mature plaga without specialized equipment is difficult and often fatal. When the parasite emerges from a damaged head, sunlight can kill some forms, but the person has already undergone severe biological change. Leon and Ashley can be saved because Luis Serra has developed suppressants and an irradiation device that destroys their parasites before complete integration. The ordinary villagers do not receive that chance. They are enemies in gameplay and victims in history. The remake's photographs emphasize this. Early images show families and communal life. Later images show cult symbols, excavation, and increasingly controlled subjects. The ending montage turns faces the player may have treated as targets into evidence of a lost population. The scientist who came back. Luis is the bridge between those timelines. He grows up in Valdalobos, watches his grandfather's cabin burn, leaves, and becomes a scientist. He later works for Umbrella's research division, probably close to projects far darker than the harmless medicines listed in his cover history. After Umbrella, he returns home and works for Sadler's Plaga Research. That is a terrible decision and a believable one. Luis is drawn back to the place and phenomenon that shaped him. He understands advanced bioorganic research and helps the cult develop it. Eventually, he recognizes what Sadler intends. He steals the amber, develops suppressants, contacts Ada Wong, and tries to help Leon and Ashley. Luis cannot restore the village. He can prevent its infection from becoming global. His redemption is not claiming he had no role. It is choosing to change course while the cost is still his. The island laboratories show how far the cult has moved beyond accidental excavation. Researchers breed superior species, implant high-ranking staff, create regenerators, develop defenses, and treat free will as a flaw. One report celebrates that the superior plaga can assimilate without damaging the host's brain. This allows useful intelligence to remain while Sadler's dominance becomes stronger. Again, the goal is not to make the host less human in ability. It is to make human ability ownerless. The regenerator experiments demonstrate another path. Multiple plagas are placed inside one body, producing extreme regenerative capability. The result is difficult to kill, but not a subtle infiltrator. Sadler's program uses different forms for different jobs. Ganados provide labor in numbers. Zealots protect the castle and perform ritual authority. Mendez controls the village. Salazar controls the castle. Krauser provides military skill. Regenerators protect research areas. Ashley provides access to political power. Sadler places himself above all of them. This is why his religion should not be separated from the parasite as mere decoration. Los Iluminados gives obedience a sacred meaning. Hosts do not only receive neural signals. They live inside a story where Sadler is a holy father. Plagas are divine gifts. Sacrifice is honor and loss of free will is salvation. For dominant hosts who retain more reasoning, belief may be as important as biological compulsion. Ramon does not sound like a man silently fighting the parasite. He wants Sadler's approval. Krauser joins for power. Mendez frames Leon as a sinner. The cult ensures that anybody with enough intelligence to interpret control is taught to call it faith. This also gives Sadler redundancy. If a signal weakens, ritual and hierarchy still direct behavior. If belief wavers, the parasite can apply pressure. Social control and biological control cover each other's gaps. That is far more sophisticated than releasing zombies. Umbrella spent decades trying to create a creature that would follow commands without becoming useless. Sadler finds an organism that can preserve a person's training, place in society, and manual skills. The cost is the person who might choose how to use them. Leon and Ashley threaten the entire system because they remove their parasites and remain themselves. Luis's device proves control can be interrupted before maturation. Ada steals the amber, taking the superior plaga sample outside Sadler's reach. The island is destroyed. Sadler mutates and dies. The command structure collapses. But defeating Sadler does not bring Valdalobos back. The villagers have starved, sacrificed one another, been transformed, or died fighting. The chief who once taught children becomes a burning insect-like giant. The castle's young lord becomes fused with a monstrous organism. Luis dies trying to stop the research he helped advance. The village survives, mainly as photographs and files. That is the real scale of Sadler's victory. He loses the global plan. He still destroys the community used to build it. What the remake changed? There are also important differences between the original game and the remake. The original emphasizes the fossilized plagas excavated under Salazar's castle and spores infecting workers. It presents Luis as a former police officer who becomes a researcher for Sadler. The remake gives Luis a clearer Umbrella research history and expands his childhood in the village. It gives Mendez a pre-cult life through records and photographs. It shows Los Iluminados arriving with injections and a promise to cure madness. Both versions agree on the central chain. Sadler manipulates Ramon Salazar. The buried plagas are released. The local population becomes ganados, and the cult uses parasitic hierarchy to control them. The remake simply makes the victims visible before conversion, how the control really worked. So how did Sadler take control of Resident Evil 4's village? There are two parts of the process that make his takeover more impressive and more disturbing than a normal infection. The first is that the plaga does not erase procedural memory. When the parasite attaches to the nervous system, the host can still access skills learned before infection. A farmer knows where tools are stored, a hunter can set traps, a miner can operate equipment. A soldier like Krauser retains combat training. Language remains available enough for Ganados to warn, threaten, and coordinate. The host's intelligence varies by parasite type and stage, but the useful structure of the brain is not simply destroyed. This is why Leon's enemies behave with unsettling normality. They close doors, they carry bodies, they tend animals, they react to a bell, they search buildings where Leon was last seen. The village does not look abandoned, because biologically it is not. The same bodies still maintain parts of it. What disappears is personal priority. Food is no longer distributed to keep families healthy if Sadler orders sacrifice and labor elsewhere. Outsiders are not welcomed for trade if the cult needs hosts. The church no longer serves the villagers' spiritual life. It organizes obedience. This produces the famine in the records without requiring every ganado to forget agriculture. The people know how to farm. Sadler's system directs their labor badly because its goal is expansion, not community survival. Control can preserve competence and still destroy civilization. The second part is hierarchy. Ordinary plagas create subordinate ganados. Dominant or superior strains allow certain hosts to exert control while retaining more cognitive ability. Sadler sits at the top, but intermediate leaders keep the network organized. 4’s. Mendez does not behave like a standard villager. He can speak in complete thoughts, interpret Leon's infection, make tactical decisions, and command others. His enormous body and later mutation make him physically useful, but his administrative role matters first. Ramon Salazar governs the castle through cult zealots and a long-established household structure. His authority existed before infection, so Sadler converts an institution rather than building one from nothing. On the island, researchers and soldiers operate specialized facilities. The superior plaga lets high-ranking hosts retain intelligence while strengthening Sadler's dominance. This layered command system means killing one villager does not disrupt the whole network, and Sadler does not need direct line of sight to control every action. It also means belief and biology become difficult to separate. Ramon's confession may reflect indoctrination, parasitic influence, or both. Mendez may genuinely believe he is protecting the flock, while the plaga shapes what protection means. Krauser chooses the cult because he wants power, then accepts an organism that further binds him to its hierarchy. At the top, Sadler can call every form of submission voluntary, because the parasite ensures disagreement becomes rare. That is how Los Iluminados describes loss of free will as peace. One island researcher celebrates the superior species by asking who would resist the joy of no longer having to choose. Sadler's Animus explains the strategic version: control one insider and an entire organization or country can fall. The cult treats freedom as inefficient conflict. Sadler offers unity by making one will count. This is what the village square demonstrates when the bell rings. Fans often ask who rings it. In the remake, Ada's actions explain the interruption in separate ways. The lore point is not that Sadler personally presses a remote button. It is that the Ganados recognize a cult signal and change behavior together. Leon survives because their schedule matters more than individual rage. The scene also shows that Ganados are not a permanent hive mind sharing every visual detail. They communicate through voices and signals. They can lose track of Leon. They can make local mistakes. A parasite hierarchy shapes intention without turning every host into one perfectly synchronized camera. That limitation is why Sadler still needs guards, patrols, notes, bells, and commanders. Las Plagas enhances social control. It does not replace organization. Ashley is supposed to extend that organization into the White House. The original plan depends on patience. Sadler allows the rescue attempt to proceed because Leon and Ashley are both infected. Once the parasites mature, they can return under the appearance of success. Ashley's relationship to the president gives the cult access that an obvious army could never obtain. This is the village method applied at national scale. Do not invade the institution. Convert the trusted person who goes back inside it. Ramon opens the castle. Mendez opens the village. Ashley opens the government. Each stage uses an existing relationship as the delivery system. That plan also explains why Sadler does not immediately kill Leon. A dead agent creates questions in another rescue mission. An infected agent can deliver Ashley, discourage pursuit, and become an additional operative. Sadler repeatedly speaks as though Leon's resistance is temporary because, biologically, it should be. The parasite will mature, choice will narrow, and the person saying no will eventually help carry out yes. Luis's suppressants buy time. His irradiation equipment breaks the process. The machine uses targeted radiation to destroy the plaga inside Leon and Ashley before it fully merges with their nervous systems. The procedure is painful and risky, but it restores the future Sadler had already claimed. That is why Luis is more dangerous to the cult than one skilled gunman. Leon can kill hosts. Luis has found a way to preserve them before maturation and has stolen the amber needed for superior strain research. He threatens the reproducibility of control. Sadler kills him in both versions because the scientist knows how the system works and has chosen to interrupt it. The villagers never receive an equivalent intervention. By Leon's arrival, years of infection, starvation, ritual, and mutation have passed. Even if Sadler dies, mature parasites and destroyed bodies do not automatically return to ordinary human life. This prevents the ending from becoming a clean liberation story. Leon saves Ashley. Ada removes the amber from Sadler's control. The island facilities are destroyed. Los Iluminados loses its leader. Valdalobos still remains a sacrificed community, the village that never returned. The cult's global mission fails after its local mission succeeds, and that is why the remake spends so much effort showing the before. Mendez's notes about teaching children and eating with families are not optional sentiment. They prove control took something more valuable than bodies. It took a functioning network of trust and repurposed it. The chief's authority becomes cult administration. The church becomes a command center. Trade routes become barriers. Tools become weapons. Shared rituals become sacrifice. The village remains recognizable because Sadler uses its existing shape as efficiently as the parasite uses a host's existing brain. That parallel is the entire takeover in miniature. Las Plagas does not grow a new brain when an old one already knows how to move a hand. Sadler does not build a new town when Valdalobos already has leaders, roads, farms, a church, and people accustomed to working together. He attaches himself to the authority structure, changes the purpose, and lets the old system carry the new command. This is why the cult's language of rebirth is so dishonest. Nothing is reborn. A living community is kept just intact enough to be occupied. The villagers become ganados in the same way the village becomes cult territory. Skills remain, names disappear. Function survives, ownership changes, and because the surface remains familiar, an outsider like Leon does not recognize the scale immediately. He sees one hostile man in one house before he sees a population moving as a controlled body. Sadler's conquest is complete before the hero knows a war exists. He first converted Ramon Salazar and gained access to the Las Plagas sealed beneath the castle. He used excavation and research to recover the parasites. His followers entered Valdalobos as religious saviors, exploiting fear of a spreading madness and injecting villagers with what they called a cure. As the plagas matured, Sadler placed dominant hosts such as Mendez over ordinary ganados. The parasites suppressed free will while preserving speech, tools, labor, and learned behavior. Los Iluminados then redirected food, industry, religion, and human life towards Sadler's expansion. He did not replace the village with monsters. He kept the village running and replaced who it was running for. That is why the opening is so effective. The ganados look close enough to ordinary people that Leon initially tries to communicate. Their houses contain family photographs. Their tools belong to work before becoming weapons. Their church bell still organizes the day. Everything human remains just functional enough to serve the parasite. Sadler's greatest weapon is not the giant creature beneath the robe. It is a normal life continuing after the person living it can no longer say no. That is also why the village remains one of Resident Evil's most effective openings. The horror does not begin with an obviously impossible creature. It begins with a man beside a fireplace who looks capable of answering a question. Leon expects communication because the human signals are still present. The plaga has not removed the language, posture, clothing, or home. It has removed the possibility that any of those things belong to someone willing to help. By the time a giant mutation appears, Sadler's most important work is already visible. He has made ordinary humanity unreliable as evidence of a free person.